utility that kind of stood out to you, some of the work that they're doing?
Yeah, it's so hard to point to just one because there are so many great ones. But I have to say, so one thing I'm really impressed about, and I'm going to do a SEPA TV episode on it very soon.
Okay.
Consumers Energy in Michigan. Their CEO, Patty Poppy, is just phenomenal. She's an amazing leader. She is super innovative, and but one of the things that I was so impressed by was that when the pandemic hit and they saw, the challenges that their customers were having, they saw the shape of their load, their demand curve changing based on people now being at home rather than being at work. And they sort of saw these dynamics at play. They launched a new program with Google. And from the time they first even thought about maybe we need to institute this program to when it was actually deployed, it was only 4 months. And wow. Anyone who knows utilities, like that is light speed, right? I mean, so it's just, that to me just stands out as a real amazing example of, the utility already was doing all the right things in terms of decarbonizing. They actually have one of the most aggressive timelines to decarbonize very quickly in the grand scheme of things. But the fact that they were able to, from project idea to execution in 4 months in the middle of a pandemic where everybody was getting used to working from home, their own employees were getting used to working from home, and there's all this change happening, just says so much. And I love that story because it demonstrates that utilities can innovate and utilities can move quickly.
Do you believe organizations like utilities are prepared for a just clean energy transition to ensure former fossil fuel workers are included? This is something I feel very strongly about, as you know, making sure that we are able to achieve a lot of our goals, especially around the DEI space with former fossil fuel workers. What are your thoughts around that topic?
Yeah, so I do think utilities are prepared. I think utilities actually have been thinking about this issue a lot more, a lot longer than people in the clean energy space. Maybe, I mean, with the exception of there might be some NGOs that have a very specific just transition focus, which that's different. But just generally, if you're talking about the utility industry and the clean energy industry, which by the way, are becoming the same thing, but if you want to put them in two separate buckets, the utilities have been thinking about this, because they've started closing plants already and they've had to be preparing. And I think that the challenge, or one of the challenges, is a time frame challenge in that, and you mentioned SEPA TV earlier. So I've done this series on utilities and social equity, and in every one of those conversations, we talked about closing coal plants and what the utility has done to make sure that it was a just transition and protecting both the workers, but also the communities where the plants were. And I've asked all of them, like, how long, given the experience you've had, how much notice do you really have to give before a plant closes to have enough time to retrain workers and do all the do the economic development to make sure once the plant closes, there's something else in that community to support the economy? The shortest time frame answer I got was 3 years. So I sort of got this 3 to 5 year window is how much notice. So I think there's this challenge in that, obviously from a climate change standpoint, we want those plants to close absolutely as fast as possible. Right. But if you, with no notice, close a plant, it is going to have negative implications on a lot of people. And so how do you strike that right balance of closing the plant as fast as you can without harming the people in the community that are associated with that plant? So I think that's a real sort of rubbing spot where, we have to really be thoughtful about that. But there's a lot of, again, in the interviews I've done with utilities on this, there's so many great stories about the things they've done, apprenticeship programs, working with local and state economic development authorities. One of my favorite stories is one of the American Electric Power AEP utility companies, Appalachian Power. I think it's West Virginia though, where they worked and they did a skills mapping exercise. And in fact, this was actually not for the coal plant, but for the coal mine. And what they found was that the skills of coal miners actually map very closely to the skills of people that work in aerospace manufacturing plants. Because apparently coal mining is now a very highly technical process. And so the skills map almost directly overlap with the skills of the aerospace industry.
That's incredible.
So they've essentially now created this aerospace economic development zone, and they're working, the utility is working together with the state and the others in the community to try to bring aerospace manufacturing to the location in the area where the coal mines used to exist.
That's so interesting because it doesn't, so in my mind, it's like energy, it needs to be energy like for like, right? So, if it's not coal, then another energy, right? But I mean, it's so short-sighted because it doesn't have to be that, obviously, as your case study points out.
That's a good point, right? It's not energy to energy, because another example that I was talking with actually the CEO from Salt River Project in Phoenix about, with a plant that they were closing that was on the Navajo Nation, but they created this apprenticeship program for a certain number of the employees from the coal plant and trained them as IT technicians. And so again, those people got trained to be able to work in any industry, not just the energy industry, but they got trained in IT skills. So I think there is a lot of opportunity. It's not just this sort of small subset of other energy jobs that they could have.
It's made me look at it in a completely different way. I never thought of it like that. Tell us a little bit about SEPA membership. We'll finish with what are the benefits of being a SEPA member?
It depends who you are and what you're looking to get out of it. So I'm going to give like the big picture benefits. Of course, there are very tactical, tangible things, but in the grand scheme of things, it is about the community and the ability to network with all of these other stakeholders and work together to find solutions, that go to help solve this immense challenge in front of us. So, the value, I think, is, again, largely in the community, right? The engagement with other members that you get to have, the opportunity to jointly solve problems for the industry that then can benefit your own company. And also, our team is fantastic in terms of just thought leadership. We do have a lot of publications, we have a lot of educational content. So, just from a day-to-day standpoint, there's a lot of work that our team does that really helps people be better prepared to do their own job and be more successful at their own job. I will mention sort of one of the ways that we facilitate a lot of what I just mentioned is through working groups. Okay. So we have about 10 working groups, and then actually some of those working groups have 3 or 4 subgroups under them. But the working groups essentially are, and as an example, we have an EV working group, and within, so there's a group of about 600 people in that working group who all have a common interest in all things EVs. And then under that group, we have 4 subcommittees, which I'm not going to get them all right, but there's one that's sort of like on regulatory and rates. There's one on fleets. I forgot what the other 2 are off the top of my head. But it's an opportunity, again, to engage on a regular basis with a group of people from a variety of different perspectives around specific topics. So I used EVs as an example, but we also have a microgrids working group. We have a storage working group. Some of the working groups are super technical. We have interoperability and sort of standards related working groups, which don't ask me to explain those. But the working groups are really valuable and provide a forum for that sort of continuous ongoing engagement amongst the members.
That's great. Well, thanks so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been fun.